when you talk about climate tech, it just seems like a buzzword, right? I mean, to anyone listening, why does that matter? Why do we need to start thinking about that? Why do we need to start thinking about investment in that area?
Because I think each of us feels it, whether you're sitting in Europe, in the US, in Africa, in the Middle East, in the Southeast Asia, we're all feeling the ramifications of, extraordinary weather patterns, for example, whether it be heat waves, whether it be disease spread, whether it be floods happening, right? I mean, this is becoming kind of a daily occurrence, regardless of where you're sitting. I mean, we had flash floods here, right? Like not so long ago. So are the cities that we live in prepared for that? Are the humans that live on this planet prepared for that? And so, what are we doing to build these climate adaptation tools? Because this is our new reality now. And so that's why I say, like, this is not going to go away. It's going to get worse, if anything. And so, how do we preempt or adapt to these new set of circumstances that we're being faced with as a species? Not to sound dramatic, but that's kind of it's true, right? Like, I mean, it is affecting us on a daily basis. Every time you turn on the news, you see something happening which is natural disaster related somewhere in the world, right? So I do feel like it's something that everyone needs to start thinking about, whether you work in the government sector, whether you work in the private sector, and definitely if you're an entrepreneur, like thinking outside the box on like, okay, well, how am I going to try and address XYZ basically based on my own area of competencies?
Right. So you've worked on several projects in the climate tech sector, but you mentioned something earlier in terms of, the viability of that sector. It might not be the place where you get your biggest returns. What has been the experience for you?
No, so I think you can get the biggest returns or big returns. There are climate unicorns out there, but I think maybe it takes a bit longer than some other sectors. And sometimes you're dealing with technologies that require a lot of R&D and that are more asset heavy. That's not something that we would invest in as a VC ultimately, because when you look at the investment value chain, there's different players, right? So you have the infrastructure type funders. They're probably better suited for the larger tickets, asset heavy type of opportunities. We're still mainly investing in things that have a software component to it, right? So that can scale more quickly, because ultimately we have a fiduciary responsibility to our investors and we have to return funds within a certain time frame, which is basically 10 years, right? So that's also a filtering mechanism in the types of opportunities that we would look to invest in. But ultimately, you need the different pockets of capital, whether it be equity or blended finance or infra, et cetera, in order to help some of these founders build what they're building at different levels, because there's all sorts of different projects that you can choose to support and invest in, right? Depending on where you sit. Yeah.
So in terms of climate tech, if you reflect on some of the projects you've supported, what is that standout project for you?
Well, there's one that's based here that I really like called Seafood Souk. For me, it's a great case study of a company that's built here in the UAE that's already in 40 markets globally, and they do seafood, their seafood traceability digital platform, basically. So do you know where your fish comes from when you go eat at a restaurant here? Not necessarily, right? Are you actually eating the fish that they're telling you that you're eating? You're not sure about that, right? So a lot of the work that they do is around digitizing that entire space within the seafood industry. And so I'm excited about that because it's also an Emirati founder who is a co-founder in the business. He's very passionate about the blue economy, so anything that has to do with the oceans. He's also known as the turtle sheikh because he does a lot of work around the conservation of turtles in the region. And for me, like that's kind of the story that we need in the region, because oftentimes when international investors look at this region, it's like, well, why would I invest in this company that's doing that when, I could invest in a US based company or Europe based company that's in the same. Well, I'm like, well, because maybe this company is actually targeting emerging markets. Maybe it's actually more relevant to the markets that they're choosing to focus on. And it doesn't always have to be Western centric necessarily, right? And so I want to see this company succeed because I think this will be a great case study for us as a region of a company that goes global from the GCC. And we need more of those.